Mendocino County Employee Retirement Association Board meeting together. And we have set it up so we can have live public comment during this meeting. Written comment, of course, can be submitted to the association as well. And the first thing on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Quincy, could you lead us in the pledge?
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the
United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
To the flag.
indivisible,
liberty and
liberty and
justice.
justice for all.
Okay, thank you. The next thing we have on our agenda is public comment. Members of the public are welcome to address the board on subjects both on and off the agenda. The board is prohibited from taking action on matters that are. Oh, go ahead. The board is prohibited from taking action on things that are not on the agenda, but may briefly answer questions.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Richard.
I see. I don't. Does everybody not have cameras today, or is it just everybody's blank?
We had a little problem earlier, but Judy fixed it. Where originally my video didn't.
Did you use the individual link that got sent to you and not the one on the agenda? So you're not, you're in as a panelist, never mind. I think it's a setting on your side. The rest of us can all see each other.
Right.
Hi, Lee.
Hi. I don't see how to get on here. It's the only button I have is stop video. So I should be on video.
You should be on video, yeah.
Oh, I know. Never mind. Hello. I keep a stamp over my camera because I don't trust it.
Okay, we'll give Richard a moment to reconnect.
Judy, you look much better without a mask this week.
Thanks.
Some of us look better with the mask.
Well, it keeps me warm.
Richard, we see your name on the screen. Do you have audio connection?
I'm not. I've asked him to unmute.
Do we have at least 28 guards circling the building today?
We're in a budget.
Y'all look so happy this morning.
You look happy too, Lee.
No, I'm not happy.
Yeah.
I'm always happy.
Yeah. Is that a ladder in your room?
Yes.
Yes, you're climbing up somewhere.
Right. There's always a project around here.
Oh, yeah. There's Richard.
Hey. You see us, Richard?
He's frozen.
Well, I'm here and ready.
Okay, thanks, Richard. So you've got audio connection at least. Do you see the rest of the board?
I'm sorry, I was disconnected.
For a minute, and then it went out. Yeah.
If you're having internet connection difficulties, sometimes it's better to turn your camera off. It might help.
So go right ahead. That's fine.
Okay, so the next thing on our agenda is the consent calendar. But first, I want to ask, do we have any members of the public who wish to address the board on the consent calendar? Or on items not on the agenda today?
I'm not showing any requests for public comment at this time.
Okay. So on the consent calendar, we have minutes of the December 16th board meeting, the January 2021 retirement report, the December 2020 retirement report with some corrections, preliminary monthly financial report, and the annual trustee education and training report. Would anyone like to pull anything from the consent calendar? Otherwise, we would be approving the consent calendar.
I would like to ask a question about the trustee education and training report.
Okay, go ahead.
It lists the last 2 years. So Judy, do we start over now, or does 2020 and 2021 go together?
We'll be starting a new 2-year period this month with 2021.
Okay, and it's supposed to be 12 hours and 12 hours
Yes.
per year. Okay, okay, thank you.
Well, total of 24 for 2-year period.
Okay.
If no one objects, we will by consensus approve the consent calendar. Okay, so we've approved the consent calendar. Now we're on to discussion possible action regarding the investment matters, and we have the monthly report.
Yeah, hi board. Before you've got the monthly investment report. So I just wanted to briefly go over the highlights there for you. Of course, we will have Callan here next month for the quarterly update. In terms of our domestic equities, you see that we're still in the process. We're basically into the last stage of closing our fund accounts with Boston and Harbor Cap, as well as the equal weight fund. So that process will be completed by the end of the month, and we will essentially have no more large cap active management at that time. In terms of returns overall, the domestic equity portfolio outperformed the benchmark by 0.38%. The small caps were not, they haven't performed quite as well in the last month that they had in the past 2 or 3 months, but you can still see that year to date, they're still well above their benchmarks. The mid caps for December beat their benchmarks, but they are still down year to date. The strongest subsection of the portfolio was our international equities. They were 1.36% above the benchmark in total. You can see the individual monthly totals there, return values. But overall, fiscal year to date, they've done well. We have a slight overweight to them. We're still within our parameters, but we're going to essentially try to maintain that overweight position in the international markets, just because with everything that's been going on in the last year, that's the most likely segment for market inefficiencies. Our domestic fixed income returned above the benchmark, but just barely. And kind of the same story with our real estate funds. Returned just above the benchmark, very similar to the fixed income performance. So that's just a quick overview. We also mentioned last meeting that you wanted to get a retail real estate update. So I pulled together that info and I sent it out to the board. Did anybody have any comments about that report specifically, or?
Well, first of all, Robert, thank you for doing that. I think you sent it out just shortly after our last meeting.
Yeah, I think I sent it out that Friday. Possibly, it was pretty close. That file didn't have some confidential information in it, but it also had a lot of detailed information in there. So it basically showed the geographical location of both funds for the retail subsector for both of those funds. And so there was a map on there. If you had Excel, you could open it up and kind of get a graphical look at where in the U.S. these specific buildings are located. So that kind of just gives you an idea of the layout of where these retail establishments are. My hope was that investment dashboard that I had sent out also, that you might be able to look at that specific to the real estate subsection in an effort to kind of, prevent you from having to look at 50 different PDFs. That report essentially combines them all for the last 5 years, and you can get a nice graphical view of the real estate returns versus the benchmark. Was that investment dashboard helpful? I did speak with Kathy and Lee about it, but I wonder if anybody else had any other thoughts on it. Was it confusing?
Well, I pressed for it, and I was traveling down to Larkspur, and my computer in Larkspur crashed, and I don't have Excel, and so I didn't get a chance to review it. I just got back home, so I will look that over. I apologize for not being able to do so, but I look forward to looking that over. I think I'd really be interested to see what our advisors think about where interest rates are going to go with Janet Yellen in place, because she's just going to spend money like a drunken sailor. And so we'll see how that goes. And if we think interest rates are going to go up, I think we definitely want to reconsider our position.
Callan will be here next month.
Richard, do you have a comment or a question?
No, I just thought I appreciate the work put into that.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
Yeah, okay. So real quick, just briefly on the two funds here, just for this final update, just to make it public. For the month ending, for the quarter ending 12/31, Reef had an occupancy rate of approximately 91% across their entire fund. That's very typical of Reef. They're fairly stable. They've maintained a 91% occupancy rate for the last 3 quarters. REEF, as you can tell on our report, has outperformed on a month-to-date, year-to-date, 3 years, 5-year, and a 10-year basis. So they've put in some work for us in that sense. They are in the process of 1 apartment acquisition in Arizona right now, and they've completed 2 dispositions. The overall portfolio makeup is very similar to the real estate file that you received a few weeks ago. 31% industrial, 15% retail, 20% apartment, and 34% office. Mostly found in the upper East Coast and the West Coast. Barings, the other fund that we're in, Barings has an occupancy rate of 95. That rate's been steady for 2 quarters. They outperformed for the month just slightly, but they remain down on the YTD 3-year and 5-year periods.
Have any of these reported their delinquencies on rents?
Barings does report that rent collection. Well, their collections are up to 93% for the 4th quarter. Barings, that has been going up for the last 2 quarters. That was 89% in the previous quarter, and that was 85% in Q2. So that number has been. They basically made a run back to where they were before the pandemic.
Well, if we haven't lost any money in our real estate portfolio, I think now's a really good time to get out of it. I mean, the vacancy rate in retail in Seattle is over 16% now. It's gone from like 5 to 16, and people don't need to work in offices anymore. The amount of office space in San Francisco that it's up for sublet now is astronomical. One of the high-tech firms just paid $8 million to buy themselves out of their lease. And who's going to take it? Just the whole world of going to the office is changing. And I just think it's a very risky space to be in right now. We don't know where it's going to go. And I don't see anything good about offices, except converting them to apartments. But the government stands in the way of getting that done for 3 to 4 years. So anyway.
Yeah. Barings has continued to reduce their retail exposure just recently, and they've got a number of plans, a storage center in LA, a multi-residential center in Orlando, and 1 office in Austin. They have also kind of maintained a very similar portfolio in terms of office, retail, industrial that you saw in that previous file. Barings is at 32% office, 16% retail, least favorites there, 17% industrial, 32% apartment.
That's 50% in office and retail. That's not a good place to be, gang.
That's Baring, and that may, be some of the reason for the difference in performance. In terms of their geographical location, they're very similar. Both the funds are very similar, primarily on the coast. So 43% in the west for Barings, and 30% in the northeast. So that would be a kind of a quick update on our 2 real estate funds there.
I hear Lee's comments, but we do have sort of a methodical process for reevaluating our investments in different categories, whether it's domestic, international, or real estate. So maybe just a question to maybe Doris, when would the next time be that we would be evaluating the portfolio mix? It seems like we just did this.
We have a schedule to review the portfolio. Right now we're doing different asset segments. as far as the next time that real estate will come due. For an in-depth review, I don't know. I'd have to check the work plan from Callan. We can certainly schedule it at any point if there's something that you'd like to look into based on Lee's concerns.
Should we think about this? That somehow, let's just say that there was a real catastrophe on things were really on the slide with a particular segment of our portfolio, and real estate's much more easily to identify than other segments, and there's a train wreck happening. Do we just sit in the cab and just watch it happen? I mean, we should be able to make a move. And I'm not saying that this is a catastrophe and we need to pull the plug. I know that, but am I hearing that we can't? We just have to fall into the cactus patch and before we do anything?
This is something that we certainly could ask Callan to speak to next month when they're going to be presenting quarterly data. We can certainly ask them about moving in or out of real estate funds. I believe both of the funds were in our open funds and are less restrictive in moving in and out of them. So if the board's desire was to alter their overall investment allocation and strategy, that's something that we could work with Callan on, but I think we could ask them to be prepared to address those questions next monthly.
And my question's a little bigger than that. It's like, we're the board, we're supposed to be in charge. And if we sat here this morning and said, we don't want to be in X investment, we can't just raise our hand and say, hey, let's sell X investment. I mean, what are we here for if we can't make a decision on something?
I think it has to be agendized, and we don't actually have.
To sell a stock? Robert doesn't have to be agendized to buy a stock.
If you were asking about moving out of an entire asset class, I don't know. We'd have to ask Jeff on whether or not that's something that we would want to agendize, because it would be a change to the investment strategy the board had adopted. But certainly the board has the discretion to choose how to invest the plan assets. Currently, they're invested according to the asset allocation strategy that the board adopted after the last asset liability study.
Well, it can still be in one class, but it could also be in cash during a period of time that we wanted to reconsider. I'm just saying that let's not get, have process, kill ourselves with process.
So if I may, through the chair, so Trustee Parker, I don't think that our executive director is saying anything inconsistent with what you want to do. We can certainly put an item on the agenda next month and discuss the issue, and there's no problem doing that at all.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, if we wanted to, I'm not saying we want to do that, but if we wanted to do it today, why couldn't we?
Because the agenda talks about only having a monthly investment report. So it's not on the agenda. So you'd be in violation of the Brown Act. If there was some urgency and we wanted to take an off agenda item because something has come to the attention of the board that there's no reasonable way we could have known, there are exceptions to that. But I'm not sure we're in that position today, especially without our investment consultant here. So if we were, and if there was some kind of a situation like that, there are mechanisms by which we could do that, but I'm not hearing that today. But there's nothing, even though it's not in our normal time sequence, through the chair, if the board wants to put an agenda item on for next month to discuss that issue, it certainly can.
Thank you.
Do we have any other board members who would like to discuss this? Go ahead, Richard.
Oh, no, I'll wait. I mean, I hear what Lee's saying. If we have to put it on the agenda for another meeting, but I think it is an interesting question, and put in the analogy of a train wreck. I think it is very interesting.
Before we leave this, maybe we could get a little board consensus on what we're asking of the consultants and staff. So my question to staff Doris would be would we want to ask the consultants to come up with, if we were to reduce or change in some way the amount that was in real estate, where would they put it into a similar classification. I'm assuming our discussion about about infrastructure was something similar to real estate in terms of its long-term investment returns and security, but I would think we would want something similar to real estate in the portfolio to replace it.
Or a fund that's apartments.
We can certainly ask them to have alternatives to the 2 real estate funds we're in, including one that would be a residential apartment fund, something like that, Lee. There are maybe a couple of other options out there also that they could bring to the board in case you wanted to trim back or terminate your exposure in either of the funds or both of the funds that we currently have and put that allocation to another type of real estate fund or similar investment. So we can certainly ask them to have a couple of suggestions available, and we can put it on the agenda as a discussion and possible action regarding real estate allocation for next month. Kathy Smith, did you have comment? I thought I saw your hand up.
I just wanted to say that I would like it to see it on the agenda. I mean, I don't know a lot about all these investment things, and I trust what Lee is saying is something that we need to discuss, and we need to have Calvin involved in that discussion.
I agree. This is Sherry.
Okay, we'll reach out to them today, tomorrow, by the end of the week, certainly, and ask them to be prepared next month for a discussion on the real estate allocation.
Okay, well, I guess we've accepted the monthly investment report, and now we're on to discussion regarding the historical benefit review project. I should go back to 3. Do we have any public comment on item 3, the monthly investment report?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you. So now we're on to discussion regarding the historical benefit review project. Doris, is this you?
Yes, thank you, Chair Jurdy. In your board packets is the benefit project status report. This report is unusually long this month. It provides historical information and the additional information requested by Trustee Forrester last month regarding corrections made under the program. This includes now detail on the Alameda corrections that weren't part of the formal VCP filing, but will be in the amended filing. We also have a breakdown by the type of issue that the corrections covered, and then there's detailed breakout by month. If you have any questions regarding the report, I'm happy to go into additional detail.
Okay, do we have any board members with questions or comments?
I have a comment. Thank you, Doris, for the report. I was hoping we could add one more thing to it, unfortunately, to change it. I know I keep changing it on you, but if we had one report that combined these individual months so we could see
it's there,
the running total.
It's the first 2 pages called Project Summary, and it has all the months listed.
But I mean with the individual case numbers and their individual.
I'm not sure I can.
That way it's a continual running spreadsheet of each individual cases. It still can be broke out on the monthly and have the summary on the face sheet, but then we could see it all in one location.
Is there desire from the board for that? I can do that. It will give you an ever increasing list every month, and we will end up with roughly 500 people on the list.
And right now we have 100, right? So this is a 4th of the corrections that need to be done.
There are 432 remaining, roughly. So this was roughly 20% of the corrections.
Julie, were you asking a question for the board?
I was just asking if we could see it on one document, if the board agrees with that. If it's too much trouble and the report is too large, then we can leave it separated in individual months, but this is going to continue to grow month to month anyway. And we don't print out paperwork anymore. We're viewing this online for the most part. And so I don't know that the size of it will matter being 100 or 500. It will just show a view of each individual case, the running total, and the increase and decrease of the benefits. And for me, that would be easier to go to rather than look at each month and see what happened in those.
My intention was to have the summary, the 2-page summary, and then the 2 pages for the current month worth of corrections. Because we had not provided the detail in the past, I provided all of the detailed reports for prior month, which involved the Alameda corrections and a couple of others. If the board is interested in receiving the complete listing every month of individuals who have been corrected, I can certainly provide that. I thought for ease of use, focusing in on just the current month's changes would give the board an idea of what occurred in the current month, so you can kind of eye the progress there along with the summary page. But I'm happy to provide the report in whatever format the board would like.
And I think this format you have right now is great. It just was picturing one extra page that merged all the months together. And also thank you for the priority, because I believe that you set that and in the correction descriptions showing the priority of the order that these corrections were going to be made. So that was helpful as well.
Yeah, that was provided. I believe it was also based on your request, Julie. If you had any comments or questions regarding the rough prioritization of the corrections, I'm happy to address any questions you have regarding that. I would like to point out that the board has sought to minimize as much as possible the harm and adverse impact to retired and active members by this correction project by not seeking to recover overpayments from members, except in the context of an offset of a refund that might be due. The need to correct these is based on tax and fiduciary counsel's recommendation that not to correct them would put our plan's tax qualified status at risk. And I wanted to just reiterate some of the reasoning that the board adopted the actions that they did in their error correction policy and in the proposed corrections for the VCP filing. So if the board is interested in having the comprehensive list of all people who have had corrections provided every month, I'm happy to provide that if I could get a feeling from the board on if that's the way you would like it, the data presented.
I'd like to say that first, thank you for the correction descriptions. The second document, I really appreciated that, and the priorities. That has helped me understand this a lot better. And I would say from my point of view, what you've presented today is enough. But for those of you that are working individually with employees and retirees, I don't have a problem with doing it another way if that would be helpful to some of you. I don't need it personally, but I'm fine with doing
it. Jim Anderson?
Yeah, I would agree with what Kathy just said, and I appreciate the error descriptions. That was very helpful. The one thing that I noticed, and especially for those that haven't been intimate to this process and that want to be able to view these things online, is that within the tables themselves is to have a legend. It doesn't have to be a complete description since you've done that on the final page or the supplemental page, but just to have rather than have an acronym for the error, to just have some sort of legend down below.
Richard?
I don't think it's a good idea to post people's individual names. I believe that seeing information about how many folks were shorted in numbers or overpaid in numbers is legitimate, but I'm a little concerned about somebody getting calls about, oh, you got too much money and I got shorted.
Well, there wouldn't be names provided. I believe what Julie was requesting was the list as it is, which just simply has a case number reference, but no name. But she
Okay,
would
so
like that information
that wasn't
provided.
that wasn't clear to me. As part of this whole program, I will be continually concerned about the people who have been shorted and would not be fully reimbursed for the retirement benefit they had earned and not being paid out. So if we need to have another closed session about that, I think that is a discussion that I'd like to see us enter back into and possibly adopt a policy that those folks will be held whole and not be held to the 3-year limit that we've imposed upon them.
I have a follow-up question, I guess, for Council Jeff. We submitted a correction plan to the IRS, and the correction plan is based on, as I understand it, it's based on what we're actually doing. So if we were to change course now from what we'd already voted to do, would we not need to submit a new correction plan to the IRS and ask them to approve a different payment plan?
Yeah, so the board has taken action by adopting resolutions and filing the correction plan. If the board wants to revisit that issue, it would need to start with a motion for reconsideration. And a majority of the trustees would have to vote and say, yeah, we want to revisit this issue. And then we could do that. And as Trustee Shoemaker is saying, I'm thinking out loud now that you'd probably start with doing that in closed session. We'd need to have the advice of counsel, both fiduciary and tax counsel, of which this board has already relied on in making its decisions. But if somebody wants to make a motion in a second and there's a majority that want to revisit and reconsider the action that this board took a few months ago, that's something that a trustee can do. And that would be the mechanism, would be to make a motion for reconsideration.
And then Dan, also to further address your question, it would be something that would be required to be added to an amended filing, yes.
Director Shoemaker?
So Jeff, you're saying that it would be appropriate at this point in time to make a motion for reconsideration?
Yes.
I would do that in regard to taking this back into closed session discussion of holding retirees whole who have been shorted in their benefit program, and discuss submitting an amendment to our filing with the IRS in regard to that issue.
I think we're
that was a motion.
Okay, I'm not hearing a second to the motion.
Okay.
Okay, does this conclude the staff report? Are there any other questions of the staff report?
Chair Doherty?
Go ahead.
I did have a question. I believe this is for the executive director. We had some fluctuation in the number of the corrections. I think when we initially considered it in closed session, we were around that mid 500 mark. And then by the time we finalized it, I thought it fell under the 500 mark because there were some other accounts that we realized that were not going to need adjustments. And then looking at these numbers again, we're still in the mid 500s. Is that reflective of them? And then there were some that had no adjustments, so that might be including those. So I'm just sort of confused on our count.
Yes, we sent out 494 notices to members saying that they were impacted and needed further review. A few of those did turn out so far to not require an adjustment, as you did note. The 494 did not include the counts of those that had already been corrected, which was really all of the Alameda related and a few others. So really that's where the reconciliation of the numbers came from, that overall there was 535 that we are correcting or reviewing, and we still have roughly 432-ish to review.
Very good. And my last would just be a comment that I just want to express on my part, and hopefully the remainder of the board's, the gratitude for you and the staff's dedication and hard work on this. I think we have a pretty basic understanding of the amount of work that goes into each one of these corrections, and the fact that you and your people have made it through 103 of those is very amazing to me, and it's appreciated by the board. I know that it's our goal to get these done as fast as possible, and I would just like to express our gratitude to you and your staff.
Thank you. I'm sure staff appreciates your support, and thanks.
Dan? Yeah. I just want to say, and I don't know if Richard's still on, but in support of what Richard said, I hate for it to just go unseconded, but I'm just thinking through, we haven't got the formal approval on what we filed, right, with the IRS. And I think if we continue down the path as we have planned and get to the end of it, then we could go back and reconsider some of these other questions. But because it hasn't been fully approved and we're still in the middle of it, I just don't think it's a great time to change direction, but we can come back and revisit is where I'm looking. I do understand, Richard, what you're saying. I'm not sure this is the right time to change everything midstream.
Thank you, Kathy.
But if I could comment back, once you get the package approved with them, it would probably be harder to make changes. And I think it's a fully submitted packet. If they were to say no, they would just say no. If they were to say there are legitimate concerns, so be it. I think it's worth the effort of. And obviously, my position here is definitely in tune to the people who may have been hurt. I'm taking a position that definitely is from the people that brought me here. So, but again, I believe that if you let it be finalized and then try to change it, that's going to be rugged. I think it's part of one whole process. It would work better. I obviously am not a tax attorney, but I just feel an obligation to look at it. Thank you. I'm done commenting on the issue for now.
Do we have a problem with board members who are directly impacted by these decisions? Voicing their opinions. I don't have a dog in this fight at all, but a lot of you others do. And there is an obvious conflict of interest.
I have no conflict of interest. I got the notification that I do not have any corrections necessary. I've been through that process. This happened to me 3 or 4 years ago. I paid back money that I was overpaid. So I'm clean. I served my time. Thank you.
I'm not suggesting you did, but or anybody's motivation would be changed even slightly. But when it comes to conflict of interest, it seems everybody's how many fairies can dance on the head of a pin these days. So
if I may, through the chair, as some of the trustees may recall, the city of San Diego, there was an action, and I'm bad on timeframes. I bet it's been over 10 years now, but the California Supreme Court has looked at this issue in a case called Lexon. And then the Supreme Court concluded that there is no conflict of interest for trustees such as yourselves who are voting on issues that's kind of required as part of your fiduciary obligations, even though you may be a retiree, because by statute you're there. So this issue has been looked at, and there is no conflict of interest.
Jim, were you trying to say something?
Yeah, but before we leave the issue, there were a number of comments just about formatting and information and so forth on future reports. And I'm just wondering what staff will do with what they've heard this morning.
We'll certainly add the legend as requested, and next month's report we can try one consecutive comprehensive list of the case numbers and the impacts to those calculations to see if the board likes that format, and then we can move forward with the report with any requested changes on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
And just on that, I realize it may be a little more work for MSERA staff, but I do think it would be beneficial to anyone looking at these reports to see the running tally as suggested. Richard?
I want to back into my statement. It may have led someone to believe that I did serve time for something around this, and I did not. That was made in jest. And I did do a payback from an overpayment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
For the record, Chair Jurdy, we do have a letter from the Association of Mendocino County Retired Members on agenda for public comment, general public comment earlier in the meeting.
Yes, we do have that in our packet. Is this something that staff would like to address, or anybody on the board would like to address?
Since it's not agendized, there's very limited discussion that could occur regarding this. If you'd like to agendize it, we can certainly put it on the next agenda for a full discussion. And Jeff, feel free to stop me if I go into more detail than is appropriate, since it was not technically an agenda item. I can say regarding the comment that perhaps items were done correctly at the time, but the law or process has changed since then, and that some of these corrections aren't necessary. All of the code sections were reviewed for compliance regarding dates that certain changes were effective, and we are not correcting folks for any changes that occurred if they were initially correct at the time their calculation was done. I wanted to ensure the board that had been looked at. The code provides the dates that it was last amended, and that information is available and was reviewed.
Okay. So I feel that there's been a response there to at least a substantial portion of the letter that in the way this is being implemented. Does any board member wish for this to be agenda? I mean, this is going to be on our agenda on an ongoing basis as we implement this.
Yeah. And similar to the SEIU letter, which I believe is coming up next, we'll provide a written response to the Retiree Association in regard to their letter. I'll send that on behalf of the board, and we can provide that to you next month if you wish.
Okay. Jim, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just relative to that letter, is that I sit on the association board. They have a meeting coming up next week. That letter has not officially been voted on. So I think if we bring it up and put it on the agenda for next week, it will be a more official correspondence from the association for the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Do we have any members of the public who wish to comment on this agenda item? Not seeing any. I do see Jerry Harris is in our meeting.
Sorry, guys. I've been trying since about 8:20, but I'm here.
Thank you. So that would bring us, I believe, to item number 5, which is the discussion of possible action regarding letter from SEIU Local 1021 regarding proposed voluntary correction implementation and MSERA response to the SEIU letter.
Thank you, Chair Jurdy. Mr. Hickey with SEIU Local 1021 sent a letter to the board as provided in your packets, where he's requesting the board reconsider their process for correction of certain purchases, as far as how those corrections would be handled for both existing employees and retired members. Our response to them is that we realize, and is in the board's 2020-13 resolution ratification of the voluntary correction program implementation, that we recognize that members relied on information provided by MSARA, and that because they have valid equitable defenses to any action that might be taken to recover overpayments from them, the board has decided not to seek recovery of any overpayments from retired members, except in the context of an offset to refund of contributions for purchases being made. The board is sensitive to the fact that this is truly does impact a number of retirees negatively, but that they did, in their advice from fiduciary and tax counsel, try to take the approach that would provide the least amount of harm to those negatively impacted members. So our response to SEIU was provided in your packets. I'm happy to address any questions that the board may have.
Okay, do we have any board member questions about the letters responding to the SEIU letter?
I have a comment that possibly the answer to the SEIU letter would also be helpful to the Retirement Association, because they bring up some similar concerns. And the response was very clear and concise, Doris explaining all the different issues. So I appreciate that letter very much. Yeah, so if possibly Trustee Anderson can bring that up also and point that out at the retirement meeting, I think that would be helpful for that discussion as well. But thank you for that response.
And I will do that. Thank you, Julie.
Richard?
Yeah, I just want to make a positive comment in regard to the response. I also want to point out to whoever's listening or watching on these letters that paying back the money with interest at the assumed rate of return is actually a pretty good deal. And I know they will lose some benefits over some time probably, but their money was probably well invested during that period of time.
Okay, do we have any other board member comments on the letter responding to the SEIU letter? Sherry?
Yeah, I would just like to again say that, yeah, excellent job with Doris, and excellent job on everything that you're doing. Very impressed with you in a very short period of time. Thank you. We're lucky to have you.
I had a lot of help with that letter, so I can't take the credit on that one.
No.
Do we have any other board member comments? Okay, do we have any members of the public who are on the call today?
Yes, we have Patrick Hickey from SEIU, so I'll allow him to speak.
Good morning, members of the board. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Executive Director Rensler, my name is Patrick Hickey. I'm the field representative with SEIU Local 1021. And we're still waiting on information about the extent that these changes are going to impact our current and active members. And we'll be in a better position to respond then once we do have the full scope of that and understand the problem. We, as I am sure many of you are, very concerned about how long these errors went on undetected, compounding the impact on participants. But we do recognize and appreciate the board's efforts to seek and fix these problems in a fair and equitable way. But we do wonder if what is proposed is a sufficient remedy. And I'm speaking here primarily about the issue of service credits. Reimbursing members with interest does not come close to the benefit that participants would have received in the form of service credits. So as things move forward, we'll continue to follow this matter, and we appreciate the board's efforts to untangle it. Obviously, you all aren't the cause of this problem, but you are in the position to help untangle it and fix it in a positive manner for your members. So with that, I'll thank you.
Do we have any other members of the public that would like to address this?
Yes, we have Ron Ball, who is a retired member.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. My name's Ron Ball. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm a retired member of County of Mendocino. I was chief deputy county council and retired in actually 1986. And I went to a CalPERS job and coordinated the retirements at the end of my career. So I wanted to offer a comment since I've read your executive director's letter, and I read the SEIU letter, and most importantly, I read the nearly 100-page decision in the Alameda case. And while I agree with your executive director's letter of December 28th, 2020, I don't believe it goes far enough. And I think what the confusion that comes about is that there is a tendency to merge and call retired members the same and treat the retired members the same as current employees. And if you read that case carefully, there's no amalgamation of current employees and retired members. And that basic interpretation injects a lot of confusion in the Alameda decision, where none should exist. The decision applies to current county employees. They're defined as either legacy employees or non-legacy employees, but they're all current employees. And it does not apply to retired members. No fair reading of that case can apply it to retired members. And it's really for the legislature, not this board, to change the compensation calculation retroactively for employees. That's a decision left to a future legislature and not the court. So I respectfully request that the board place this matter on a future agenda, as it seems to have discussed, to clarify that the resolution 2020-13 does not apply to retired members. That it applies, as the court makes fairly clear, in my opinion, that it applies to current members. Thank you.
May I make comment, Chair Jurdy?
Yeah, go ahead.
The board passed two resolutions, one regarding specifically implementation of the Alameda decision. Per fiduciary counsel, it does affect retired members who retired after those changes relating to the change in the definition of compensation earnable in 2013. The Alameda decision does not affect anybody outside of the scope of that change in compensation effective for those who worked after 2013, where compensation should have changed. So the Alameda corrections that we did process as far as retirees was making a change to the calculation of the final average salary utilized for their benefit based on the Alameda decision that says the board's resolution and other action could not be sustained, and that it couldn't be used as a way to circumvent what the law required of them as far as exclusion of standby and on-call pay from compensation from January 1st, 2013 forward. The other corrections, as far as the separate historical benefit correction program, those corrections are not based on the Alameda decision, but part of the Alameda decision was referenced in the letter in response to SEIU to the board, in that that recent Alameda decision of the California Supreme Court says that the board has a responsibility to apply the serial statutes as they are written, and not to evade the law based on prior promises that have been made. So, in some of those instances, or the reason we're correcting that is that it was wrong at the time. We did not follow the law that was in place, and we have to go back and correct our process and those benefits to conform with the requirements of the law.
Okay, Judy, do we have any other members of the public?
No, we do not have additional public comment.
Okay. I also want to thank Doris and Jeff or anyone else who had a hand in writing the letter. Because we will have a similar letter addressing the letter from the Retirement Association at our next meeting. If there are any issues that were brought up today that you would like to elaborate on in the response to the Retirement Association at next month's, feel free to do so. I think that would be appropriate. Okay, do we have any other, I'm not seeing any other board member comments at this time. Okay, I believe that brings us to discussion and possible action regarding proposed special study regarding re-amortization of the UAAL restart layer, and this is item number 6.
Thank you, Chair Jurdy. Based on trustee requests to see what the impact would be if the amortization layer, the oldest amortization layer referred to as the restart layer, was re-amortized to a shorter period or had an additional payment applied to it. We did approach Siegel, who provided an estimate based on the scenarios we provided to them, and there were 3 scenarios there. The estimated cost to perform that study is in the range of $8,000 to $12,000. That question here is whether the board wishes to pursue an actuarial study regarding the 3 options outlined as far as the re-amortization of that restart layer.
Do we have any board member comments on this?
Thank you, Chair Jurdy. I was reading the proposal and I was a little confused. Item 3, I believe it was, talked about when the pension obligation bond is paid off, and in 2027 start looking at setting aside $4 million annually towards the unfunded liability. But then further down, a few paragraphs below that, it was speaking to a one-time payment of $4 million. So question, were we asking for 4 different scenarios? And if I can go through this whole thing first, and then if you can let me know. I am supportive of this, so I'll just say that up front. I think that it's worth the cost for us to explore this as an option, and whether we actually do or make any changes or not, I think that it's valuable information. And we need to look at how we can adjust or work towards our unfunded liability outside of just accounting on an amortization schedule and an interest income. And this might provide more information for us to make a purposeful change. So I would make a motion towards adopting, amending the budget and allowing these costs.
And Trustee Forrester, to address the question you asked at the beginning of your comment, option 3 is an ongoing $4 million, but Siegel indicated that they would also include essentially a 3A, so to speak, which would just be showing the effect of a one-time $4 million payment. But it really would be both of those items. Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Sherry.
I would second that motion. I think that was a motion that Julie made. I think it's been about a decade since we really looked at ways that we could affect the unfunded liability. And we really did a lot of things. And I didn't realize it had been so long until we started having this discussion. And I do think it's nice. And I do think that this board needs to look at it. Maybe it's not now, but maybe it's in the next year, 1, 2, 3 years. But I do think we really need to start coming up with ideas to help the county think about what will happen once we pay off the POBs. So I would definitely support this.
Jim?
I'm mute, excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was curious, and I think I know the answer, but I wanted to make sure, is that knowing that the debt service is more in the $7 to $8 million range, is the $4 million just a general fund component of that? Is that why that is the number that you're looking at?
That's what we were told by Alan Flora, who was the assistant CEO back 2 to 3 years ago, maybe further than that, that even though the payment is actually $8 million a year that we pay every July, that the general fund component of that is $4 million. So that's why we're thinking $4 million. We don't know what that will be, but we're thinking that would be the lowest that it would be. So.
And if I could add, I think it's slightly more than half, but not substantially more than half, that is comes from the general fund for payroll anyway. And so I think it would stand to reason the pension obligation bonds are similarly apportioned. Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do we have any members of the public who would like to comment on this motion?
No public comment at this time.
Okay. Can we have a roll call vote?
Yes, the motion is to amend the budget to allow for the charges for the UAAL re-amortization project. Ms. Shatmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Forrester?
Yes.
Ms. Cavanis? You're muted.
Catherine, you're muted. We didn't get your vote. Judy, can you unmute?
Catherine, we did not hear your vote.
Yeah,
I can hear you. I just had trouble. My vote is yes.
Thank you. Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Chair Jordy?
Yes.
Ms. Smith? Kathy Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Cromer?
Aye.
Mr. Shoemaker?
Aye.
Ms. Harris?
Aye.
Approved.
Okay, thank you. Now we're on to MSARA's work plan and MSARA accomplishments.
I think we're on item number 7, Chair Jordy.
Nope, we're still.
That would be item 7, retiree mailing policy.
Oh, you're right. Go ahead.
Thank you. Attached is the triannual review of the retired member mailing service policy. This policy simply allows MSARA to enter into an agreement with an organization to distribute or cause to be distributed communications to our retirees. The corrections or updates to this are really just replacing the administrator title with the executive director and adding the last review date. There were no substantive changes to this policy.
Do we have any board member comments on the updated policy?
I'll move to approve it as updated.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Do we have any members of the public wishing to comment on this item?
No request for public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any board members requesting to comment, so can we have roll call?
Yes, motion to adopt the policy as updated. Ms. Shatmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Forrester?
Yes.
Ms. Cavanis? Ms. Cavanis?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Chair Drudy,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Cromer,
Aye.
Mr. Shoemaker,
Aye.
Ms. Harris,
Aye.
approved.
Okay, thank you. Now we're on to item number 8, which is board work plan MSARA accomplishments.
Thank you, Chair Drudy. Attached is a quarterly review of the board work plan. It outlines objectives aligned with the strategic plan adopted by the board and specific actions taken in support of those strategic goals. There are a couple of changes to note. As far as the benefit review project, I am putting an extended due date out to September of 2021. And there's a typo there. I do apologize. I'll get that fixed. Just because progress is a little bit slower than we initially anticipated. We still may make the June 30 deadline, but I just wanted to make the board aware that there's a possibility that it may run longer than that. Overall, if you have any questions regarding any of the objectives or the actions taken in support of those objectives, I'd be happy to answer any other questions. I also attached for the board references and a list of accomplishments that the board made in 2020. Most of these are items that occurred after I started here, simply because I wasn't here during the first half of the year. I'm not trying to imply that the board didn't do anything the first 6 months, just that I may not have had as much visibility to them. I did look through the past agendas to see what should be added there, but these were items that I came up with that I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of your actions and how they have been in support of the objectives of the plan and our strategic plan. If you have questions, please let me know.
We've had this format for several years, and I think it's a great format to keep track of projects and to acknowledge accomplishments by the organization, and hope that the county this year, as we have a more formalized strategic plan, that we have something along these lines to keep track of ongoing projects for the county. Do we have any other board member comments?
Hi, Chair Judy. So regarding the organizational review of the positions that I know you've been waiting on for the staff in MSARA, I was wondering, Doris, if you can give us any kind of update on that. And I also wanted to comment on how incredibly important that is to the board, to MSARA, to have our staff properly compensated and represented in their job descriptions and their pay. And this has shown how extremely critical this is with this historical benefit review project. And I would be extremely concerned if we started losing any of our staff members, especially with what's going on right now. And I'm interested in maintaining positions going forward that'll be attractive for people that can handle these complicated functions and tasks and interpretations of the law. So hopefully you're getting somewhere there, Doris, but I was wondering if you could give us an update.
Yes, thank you. I have been in contact with Human Resources, and our analyst was able to provide me with some information on the organizational review. Because of HR staffing issues and their reorganization in COVID, this certainly had been delayed longer than expected, but it is actively being worked on by Human Resources now, and they expect to have, I believe, some actionable review for our approval or our input on their suggestions as far as the organizational review this first quarter of 2021. Something could even go to the Board of Supervisors, assuming the outcome of the review is such that it would require Board of Supervisor changes late this quarter or the very beginning of next quarter potentially. So they are making progress there.
Great, thank you.
Do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment on this item.
Okay. Well, we will accept the report. Are we required to make a motion to adopt the report or just accept it? Looks like we're accepting it.
You can just accept it.
Thank you. Okay, now we're on to item number 9, which is discussion regarding administrative report. Doris?
Thank you, Chair Jurdy, members of the board. My administrative report simply covers the fact that we're continuing to operate with limited member contact by appointment only. However, should the northern region of the state move under the regional stay-at-home order, we would actually terminate all in-person member services and return to providing services by phone, web, email, etc., as we did during the first shutdown. At this point, most of our work is handled remotely with members anyway. We really are not seeing that many appointments made. I did want to mention that on our website, we have made available the fiscal year 2020 CAFR, and I wanted to thank staff and their work in getting that document completed and published and up on our website. So thanks both to Robert and Judy specifically, but all of our staff that had their hands in that. As Chair Jurdy mentioned, there is a reminder here that if you have not done your payment for the waiver of recourse premium, please send a check for $9 to Judy as soon as practical. Judy, I believe, attached or will be sending out to you the Form 700 for last year. The due date for that is April 1st of 2021. Those completed forms can be returned to Judy. Attached also was a SACRS legislative update. It talked mostly about state budget issues. Additionally, there is an attachment for the SACRS nomination for board of directors. You were sent that information under separate cover a week or so ago, and this item will be on next month's agenda to make a formal decision whether, pardon me, the board wishes to nominate anyone for positions on the SACRS board of directors. So that concludes the administrative report. I'm happy to answer any questions if the board has any.
Not seeing any. Judy, do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, thank you, Doris. That leads us to our last item on the agenda, which is general board member discussion. Are there any board member who would like to just offer a comment on general topics? Okay, not seeing any. This was a remarkably fast meeting. Looks like we can adjourn at 9:48.
Wow, that's a record.
Okay.
That's the skill of the chair, right, Dan?
See you all next month.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
I'll
Take
send you
care.
some